All right. All right, it's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. It's 2 p.m. in the council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. And this regular meeting of the Selkirk Fire Service Joint Power Board is now called to order. For the record, I am Mayor Jeremy Brim presiding. Also present are the members of the board: Rich Townsend, representing the Saco Fire District; City of Sandpoint Councilor Kyle Schreiber, representing the City of Sandpoint; and Ken Deck, representing the Westside Fire District. At this point, I would ask Chief Gilchrist to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is the public comment portion. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public participating remotely on Zoom today?
We do not.
No one on Zoom. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to provide the board with general comments before we get underway with the agenda?
Go ahead. No, okay, go ahead. I'll kick it off.
Yeah.
As you go through your discussions and the cooperative efforts between the fire district, I hope you understand that it has to be an operational outcome out of that. And you've heard me before, I've said it many times, I feel like the linchpin for a lot of the problems that exist is because of the understanding of what minimum staffing is. And minimum staffing all the way down to how many people on an energy company, so that when they respond, show up, they can do the work they're trained to do and do it in a safe fashion. I think anything else just falls short of what the public needs, and too much addressing of the administrative side and discussions about the top half of any fire department is missing the point. Used to have a combined career and volunteer fire agency. We don't anymore. So it's all career. So I think the public has seen enough evidence of calamities. Last August, we had a lot of fires in eastern Washington that ought to show us where we need to go and whether or not our departments can measure up to fires like that. And so that's my concern: firefighter safety, staffing levels, and give the chief the resources he needs to manage for a population our size. Yeah, I'm open to any questions, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Any comments or questions for Mr. Glass? Any other public comment? Chief,
So Quinn Frank, local 2319 president for the record. Just handing out a letter to all commission board members and council. If I could just pass one over, Mr. And this is just a letter of intent to start negotiations the week of May 12th for the collective bargaining agreement. These are just tentative dates. We want you to bring to your boards to discuss for information. And we're open to timeframes anytime that week, or if there's an alternative week that works better to begin our CBA, just let us know. Evenings would work best for us. Also probably for the members that are on this board that work. We expect it should only be a couple days of negotiations, or even a day if you feel well. So just putting that in your lap so we can begin to have that discussion. And when you guys decide on an exact time collectively, just email myself and CC Chief Gilchrist so we can get that out to the crews. All right?
thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys preemptively doing that and for the time. Any other comments from the public? All right, moving right along, board and staff announcements. Any general announcements from the board members or from staff? I have just, more of a commentary or just a announcement that I think we need to make sure that, we're careful, especially when meeting, because, any two members of the Joint Powers Authority represent a quorum. If West Side and Sandpoint were meeting, we would have a quorum. If Sagal and West Side were meeting, you would have a quorum. So just to prevent running afoul to the open meetings law, I would just ask that if there are meetings of any two districts, that be notified as a joint powers board meeting, just because of that potential conflict of you would have a quorum if you're discussing joint power authority items, you effectively are having a meeting of the joint powers authority. So we just have to notice that appropriately.
This is the special meeting. We had to respond to the letter.
I think it goes for any time those two, any two of us, if we were, you and I
That's the
were
one that
meeting,
triggered.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Just as an awareness of that, that's something we have to maintain and notice appropriately.
We did do a notice on it.
Yeah.
We did one.
Yeah, it was an open meeting.
With an agenda. It is available. It was above board.
And we voted as separate entities.
That's right. We voted as separate entities. So the Sagal Fire voted with their commissioners and then
West
West Side did their vote with commissioners, but it was a joint response to the
Yeah,
request from you. So I mean, that's the history of what, I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah, and I can check with our
it's
legal.
kind of a unique
It is.
situation
It
where
is.
one of the parties asked the other two to respond. So,
Yeah,
and we had to figure out how to do that.
right. No, I don't say it in a sense of being, I'm not frustrated or anything by it. It's just, I want us to be careful because, and I guess the question is, should it have been noticed as a joint powers authority meeting too, since you had a majority of the joint powers there? I don't know the answer to that. It just jumped out as something we should probably just be attentive of and aware of. Whatever it's worth, I can ask for some clarification from our attorney as well. That was my only comment. Any comments from staff at this point? If not, we'll now proceed with approval of the meeting minutes from the February 29th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
We'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Motion passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the chief's report. Chief Lucas.
Thank you. So I'd just like to kick these off with career anniversaries. So in the month of March, we had several. March 1st, Captain Hilton or Engineer Hilton went over 27 years. Olive Pucci and Crom both went over 4 years. Engineer Weeks, Firefighter Weeks went over 1 year, and Captain Yukich and Pucci both went over 7 years. So just congratulate them on their career anniversaries announcements. I spoke with Michelle over at the city of Dover. It looks like our joint, well, not a joint purchase, but the purchase of the rescue tools for West Side looks like they have all the information they need. I sent her something the other day and she responded saying that that would work to get to their council. I guess how that works is West Side will actually purchase those rescue tools and then through the city, Dura funding would be used to reimburse that. So other than that, and other than them having any other kind of request for that particular purchase, then it looks like we're good to go. We're just waiting on the final word and then we can go ahead and move forward with the purchase. Resident program is being brought back online. We had our first, the first resident was interviewed and she'll be stationed at the Dover station beginning that first week of May. We have a second candidate, I believe was interviewed this morning. Is that right, chief? Or yesterday?
No, I communicated with them, but no formal interview.
Okay, no form number yet. And potentially that firefighter would go to the Bottle Bay Station. The incident review for, and that's why I was looking at that piece of paper, is actually for the February review, because this is actually the March meeting. So we had 144 incidents. Sago had 57, Sandpoint had 77, and Westside had 10. And then for the month of March, which is the sheet that you have, Sago had 58, Sandpoint had 74, and Westside had 16 for a total of 148. Personnel update, we have 2 on modified duty. We have 1 on catastrophic leave. We have 2 of our personnel will be retiring in early May. Again, that's Captain Frank and Engineer Hilton. Just congratulations on them. That's a big milestone. If you want to stand up and, say a few words, please go ahead. We have sent offer letters to 2 of our candidates, and we anticipate their onboarding on May the 13th with an on-shift approximate of mid-June. Training in the Recruit Academy is completed. Firefighters Elmont, Nelson, and Nicholas are now on shift. One of our firefighters is off of probation as of this last month, and then the other 2 are projected to be off of probation this month. Selkirk we were able to host the Northern Idaho Fire Leadership Symposium last week from the 2nd through the 4th. It was an absolutely amazing turnout. I just appreciate Chief Armstrong for putting that all together. We were predicting to get about right at 50 people a day would have been our max, and we were hovering right at the max every day. We raised approximately $3,500 for the Jeff Welsh Foundation through our raffle. They're a local charity that helps emergency service personnel and their families get through some tough times. If there's an accident or something like that, I heard stories about them stepping up just to help make sure that bills were paid. And if they needed some travel arrangements made, things of that nature, it's just a real good feeling to know that a foundation like that exists here in Idaho, and the money that we donated to them, it'll stay local. But it is open to the vast, almost all emergency services personnel. They do a lot of fantastic work. So we're going to try to partner with them throughout the year on different things that we do. But this is, as we come back around the next year, that's going to be my recommendation, is that we continue to do work for that charity and raise money for them. Crews are training in an acquired structure off of South Florence. They're conducting various drills, basically everything that we can do to that house, with the exception of live burns. We were over there this morning. They were doing some search and rescue and some bailout scenarios, and the training was going really well. Maintenance items, we have a project over at Station 3 in Sago that's going on. We do have, other than apparatus, mostly is just routine maintenance, but we do have some apparatus updates that are going to need to be brought to the individual boards at their next meeting, which is tomorrow. So we'll bring those up then. The other projects we have going on right now, we have the task manuals for the engineer and the captain are in the final phases, and look forward to getting those pushed out around the end of the month. We have a radio project that we've been waiting on. Chief Armstrong's been working with IDL to get their new channel template. So that just came out today. So we got contacting Raycom radios to get their channels put into the radios under the new template, and also reactivate our scan feature on the radio, so we can actually scan one channel while we're talking on another one. That's been a long time coming. We need that too. Community engagement. This month on April the 20th at the library at 1407 Cedar Street, we'll be hosting the car safety seat check event, and that'll go from 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's it for the chief's report.
Any questions for the chief?
I was gonna ask about the radios, that grant program, is that
So that's,
still in the works?
yeah,
And
so
that-
we
would that-
put in for that.
Yeah.
That's separate from this. This is with our current radios. We put in for that, but we won't hear back from that. That was through AFG, so we probably wouldn't hear anything to that. Probably around the end of the summers when they'll start notifying different, agencies. They have like, AFG goes through FEMA, so they do it in like, it's almost like a draft pick, right? They have like 7 or 8 rounds that they go through. So hopefully if we hear something, by then, then we'll be able to look at that.
And the rollouts, near term enough that you gotta deal with it before you.
I'm sorry, which one?
The rollout of the channel reallocation,
Yeah, so that is, it's basically an update for IDL, for their channel, so that we're able to just kind of have that interoperability. We were waiting, we needed to get some stuff done to our radios. We were waiting on that list to come in, so that way we only have to call the radio shop up here, one time and try to get it all done in one swoop. So we're not paying, service calls after service calls, right?
okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, hearing none. Move to, old business agreement for the interim fire chief of Northside Fire District. This item was discussed.
Financial report?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was getting ahead of myself. The next item on the agenda is the monthly financial report. I will yield the floor to the city finance director, Sarah Lenz.
All right, we'll start with the fire station district wages and benefits. This is through February, so we have 9.5% or 9.5 out of the 26 pay periods have been paid as of the end of February, which is 36.54% of the year. And as you can see in here, the budget spent year to date for Sandpoint is 35, 32 for Sagal, and then 45 for West Side. And just a reminder that as the actual bills, when they come, have all the detail in them. So if you need to look at any of that detail of what that makes up, that does come in the individual bills too, that you send out to the different districts. And then on to the JPA administration. We are 5 months, at the end of February, 5 months down, that's 41%, and we are at 42% spent in total across all the administration expenses. I don't think there's anything this month to note, besides there was just some uniform, a large uniform purchase, but other than that, not large, but a larger, I think there was all the t-shirts and stuff that were bought.
Yeah, that's usually we do we do a few of those throughout the year, but the major one that we do is in the beginning of the calendar year. So this is reflective of that.
The 3 new.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Wasn't the 3 new?
No, it's just like everybody in the department, once a year, just kind of go through and make sure everybody's got all the uniforms that they need, and if they need to grab some more pants or shirts or what have you.
Just kind of a confused question here, back to the fire station district wages and benefits. If West Side's at 45%, unless there's a change in a reduction in overtime, what happens at the end of the year? Do they need to reopen their budget if they track at this level, or?
Usually throughout the year, usually the budget in total, it has to be over the budget in total.
Mhm.
So I know that there are, and that would be a chief question or not my question, but a Larry question, but that's, the same thing happened last year. So they budgeted for that this year, just I won't speak on their behalf, but.
Well, we're hoping that with the additional hires that we just did, the 2 that we're bringing on, obviously to replace the couple of retirements that we have forthcoming, but the 3 that we just hired in gives us a full roster. So, here directly, I'd say probably they're in. Westside's not gonna have anything else going on until the end of the budget year unless something just happens out of the blue. That should take care of that.
Yeah, the majority of this overtime with one individual that was out, I think.
We had one opening and then one individual went out on
Yeah.
catastrophic leave, so it kind of hit them doubled up.
And they have to staff with overtime only. So that's how come this in January was very high.
Thanks. Any questions or comments regarding the financial report?
No.
Now moving on to old business. Agreement for the interim fire chief, Northside Fire District. This item on the agenda is proposed agreement for an interim fire chief with Northside Fire District. This item was discussed at our last meeting and tabled for further review by the city of Sandpoint. I have not heard back from our legal counsel on this. I did hear from, Commissioner Lewis about, potential payment of approximately 2,600 a month. I guess, open it up for discussion. I need to, obviously, because these are Sandpoint employees, need to hear back from our legal. They have about 12 other issues. It's not, untypical for us not to hear back from them on issues, in a month or a month and a half. But I can certainly press them on this.
I did ask, Northside if they would share what they got from their legal, so I had that sent out. I don't know if that helps, but, I think we got, it.
Yeah, you sent it out.
Okay.
The mayor.
So we have that, and just as a discussion point, can we like approve for the board? I make a motion and approve it, and then the city can follow through, so we don't have to come back, say you get it tomorrow, for example, so we can just kind of move out. It seems like it's, I hate to see things languish.
Sure. I think board approval pending Sandpoint legal review.
Okay.
Would give us that,
Make a motion
flexibility.
that we approve it pending Sandpoint legal review.
I'll second.
Motion is section to approve, interim, what are we calling it? Fire chief of Northside, pending Sandpoint legal review. Open it up for discussion. I guess, I would just bring up a question, in terms of the three entities, can somebody clarify for me if there's additional capacity, why we're gonna spend that outside of the districts? If the deputy chief has additional bandwidth, why are we spending that outside of the districts and not utilizing it within our districts?
Yeah, I guess that, we could go back to the chief for that question, but as I understand it, I mean, it's a capacity that we have a mutual aid agreement. We're trying to, support the local agencies. We're getting compensated for it, so it helps.
Well,
from
I don't-
Cost offset.
I would assume that the deputy chief, if he didn't have bandwidth, he would speak up and say he doesn't have the time to do that. But then again, it's helping a fellow agency and allowing them to add additional firefighters, which to me seems like a more efficient way of doing things if the deputy chief has the time to support all the various entities.
I actually had that same question and spoke directly with the deputy chief about that, and he assured me that this would not affect his ability to complete his normal duties with Selkirk. And, I did ask, are we asking too much of you? And is this going to, I'm concerned that, burnout and things like that, but it's a temporary nature, and he said he was willing to put forth the extra work, so.
So, that's a follow-up question I have. I mean, is anyone questioning or concerning our staffing levels? If we have that much extra capacity as deputy chief, are we structured correctly? Do we need to, if it was my private business and my employee had enough time to go work somewhere else half the time, I would say, what's wrong? Just as a business owner.
Sure.
That's the first question that would come to mind. So I pose that, what am I missing here? Why does the deputy chief have 50% of his time available to work elsewhere and not for our districts?
I think it's a third, but yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
what's a valid question if, the chief or deputy chief want to address that.
Well, I think that
Is it
the,
order? I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Order.
I'm more than happy to if I'm recognized. So,
Absolutely.
let me try to package all this up and respond appropriately. Northside is a huge component of what we do. They are very vital in not only protecting the entire county, but protecting the city of Sandpoint. So making sure that they are continuing to move forward, successful, able to increase their staffing levels, I think is of interest to everyone sitting at the table. With regard to capacity, I think that it wouldn't be fair to say that I have a third of my capacity. I think there are some long-term projects, long-term planning that the chief and I have talked about that right now with everything kind of being up in the air. We aren't diving into that necessarily, so that does give me a little capacity, but also a lot of what I'm doing for Northside is evening meetings in between other projects. A lot of it is handling from emails from my office while I'm multitasking. And we're running into this not knowing what we don't know, and that's the reason I suggested it the way it is, because if it's 3-4 months from now, it is too much. I have no problem walking to my boss's office and saying, this is too much, I can't keep up, or going to a commissioner and saying, I need more help. I think what you're seeing is a lot of leadership, oversight, working with their staff to take on some additional projects. They have some folks that have some capacity there. There just needs to be some mentoring and leading. And then we don't know what the future holds. So obviously Northside's been a great partner to us. I think you're seeing stronger relationships now than you ever saw before that. I think this is a way to nurture those relationships as well as give them an opportunity to step back, look at their budget, focus on their levies like everyone's doing. I don't know if I answered the questions, but those are my thoughts, so.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Armstrong. Chief, any other comments on that?
No, I would just say that, for to date, again, it's been giving him a hand, helping him out. He hasn't really been over there during what we call our normal business hours. He's out in the field doing a lot of stuff, but he's not necessarily at Northside handling their day to day. With the majority of that stuff taking place in the evening, like their meetings and stuff like that, I don't think it's, to me, it's not that big of an issue right now, but I think it's probably worth, we had even explored the possibility of, shifting him into a volunteer role, so that way it's not a conflict of interest of working here and doing stuff over there. So it's just a matter of when he hits that point, and that's always an option for us as well.
Okay,
So the way it's written up, it's month to month. So if it's like a problem, we can
drop it.
adjust accordingly, and it's got a 6-month term. I just checked, I wasn't sure. So, but I think the month to month part of it makes it, if it's not working, it's not, right?
From a budget standpoint, Sarah, do we have additional revenue built into the budget? Would this create any complexities or with the current budget?
No, we don't have it built in, but that's not an issue. Usually it's an expenditure side, that's the issue. So, it was just already budgeted. So, it would just be a simple another bill that we'd be billing out at the end of the month for that. So. The only thing I would have to add is that typically we always bill, salaries and benefits because that is the full cost of an employee. That's how we always do it. So, I would suggest that in here. And also the other thing I would suggest is that, that Selkirk technically is not a legal entity to be billing under. It would have to be from the city of Sandpoint. It would be the actual legal entity that would be billing out. Cause that's who's receiving the revenues. And then what would happen on this end of it is I would just apply it to the JPA, admin billing here as probably a line down here as revenue received. So it would just offset, or probably actually under the fire administration, I just do as a revenue received. So it would offset the expenses. And then share across the organizations.
I could be wrong, but I believe that the contract is written to say that the payment goes to Sandpoint.
Well, those are my only questions. Obviously, I'll jump on legal and get them to expedite their review and provide any feedback and share that with you. Any other discussion on this? And it's a vote then.
I'm an aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, 8B. Just a question about the agenda. I see a letter in here. Tammy, I didn't get this letter on what you mailed out. Did I miss that or?
No, you didn't. It was not available until a few minutes before the meeting.
Okay,
I think we put it on here so we could have any
Discussion on
discussion,
it.
but the official delivery was gonna be
Tomorrow.
signed, hard copy. But this is the content.
Yeah, it was your request to have it in by tomorrow.
yeah, okay. Obviously, I'm just seeing this for the first time, probably Kyle as well.
Well, I did call Kyle to kind of, he hasn't seen it, but I did tell him what we were doing and there's a new date in there.
Mhm.
And so some of the rationale behind the date, for us, it was a budget cycle made the most sense.
Mhm.
And instead of going beyond what the city council had approved, we felt like it was more appropriate to back it up in front of what the city council approved, put it aligned with a budget cycle. We have a champion, we have a consultant, both boards have agreed to fund to help us get there. So we feel like we can make this date comfortably. So that's kind of the meat of the change. And then we kind of outlined down there what our goals are with this new authority. Obviously, we're gonna have to engage and hammer all those out, but
Well,
that's what's in the letter.
Given us to the end of this budget year is approximately 6 months, and we have a three-month contract that we just signed, finished signing today with the consultant to review the JPA and what options we have going forward. And to kind of go back to your earlier question, Mayor, the city gave notice that they may potentially pull out in 60 days. And so West Side and Sagal had to be prepared for that. And with the city doing the administrative portions of this and the financial portions, without meeting together, it'd be very difficult for us to be prepared for all of a sudden the city to pull out and say, we're done, and then we're just kind of left hanging. So that's part of the reasoning between our joint meetings and being prepared and moving forward with what we're calling an enhanced JPA.
Yeah, no, I understand that. If you don't mind, if I can just take a minute to read.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna say.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody can take a second and read it, and then we can kind of go through and highlight or discuss. And I know it's early, you won't be able to digest it all in one sitting, but at least we can have a discussion on it.
Never go home.
There is a bit to digest here. I guess to start, do I have it? Am I understanding it correctly that extension to September 30th and you have hired a consultant and you're paying for that consultant independently?
Yeah.
To
Yes.
figure out the structure of a joint powers.
West Side and Sagal are paying for that separately.
Joint powers authority, fire authority.
Well,
Well,
it's an enhanced JPA.
Okay, it says fire authority here, but
Well, we'll have
I
to
gotcha.
see where you're
Gotcha.
looking.
I see the quotation.
Yeah, we're trying to stay away from
Yeah.
calling it that.
Yeah.
Authority like, but it's an enhanced agreement. And yeah, we hired a consultant to advise us on, how to structure and make sure we do it in a fashion that's legal and appropriate.
And
for it.
if that consultant comes back favorable to, the direction you're leading it, or chief and everyone is leading it, the employees would be employees of the JPA, not employees of Sandpoint.
That's right.
All administrative functions would be
At the JPA.
Right.
governed to the JPA.
Part-time something, we'd have to staff
Yeah.
that, as well as the.
Including all
HR and
finances.
As well.
Yeah, so that was one of the highlights or bullet points to take the burden off the city.
Yep, yep. The chief would be employed and report to the JPA
Yep.
board.
Along with the deputy chief.
Yep. Chief would serve as the chief executive of the JPA,
And then
placing me, way,
the
like that.
agencies would have representation,
a more equitable manner
right?
as recommended by the consultant, a term recommended by the consultant with renewals. And consideration and a process for other partners or agents to join midterm. Okay. I guess there's a couple things that jump out. One, so September 30th, we've started our budget process already. So that budget process includes budgeting for the current administration and receipt and all the revenues and the HR. So, not knowing how this consultant, what the solution's gonna be before then, I would imagine would leave Sarah in a challenging position. Would we budget for
To me, with this, we wouldn't budget anything. I mean, we would not budget any JPA, administration costs at all. I mean, because it's done for this
Yeah.
at that time. So we would just be budgeting our fire costs here in the city of Sandpoint.
Okay. And then presumably, if this consultant came back and said this was legal, and if the council decided that that was a direction they wanted to go, Sarah with that budget authority then just, if this were to work, shift over to the JPA and just cut them a check and.
Well, that would have to be decided by
The
the council.
Yes,
For
yes.
sure.
Absolutely.
Well, I would have many questions and I would probably address that to the council.
Yeah.
One, so who's paying these people? Why would we, when we have a staff here in the city to pay our own firefighters, why would we be paying somebody else to pay them on our behalf?
Yeah.
So I would definitely get in front of council and definitely give them why this is not a good thing from the city standpoint.
Yeah.
From a financial standpoint of this. That doesn't mean it's a fire standpoint, that's a totally different thing. So I'm again looking at the city standpoint, not fires. So just so you guys know that. It's totally different perspective here.
You're wearing.
Yes,
that
I wear a
chair.
serious hat, not a fire hat. So that would be definitely something that would be part of the budget. That would be presented to them. So
But this would take Sagal and West Side out of it.
Yep.
Out of your purview.
Right.
And you would
Yes.
just deal with Sandpoint
correct.
as we move forward with this.
But what he was asking was would we just give that money to here? And so that would be a whole nother, because how we budget, if this is the way if this is how it is, we would not be budgeting for a deputy chief anymore. We would not be doing the stuff that we brought on for the JPA. Those positions would not be in our budget at the beginning of the year. So it complicates things in that regard because they're not in the budget. So it just leaves things kind of hanging, put it that way. And that makes me nervous because those people don't, at this point, would not have a position in our budget. Just in case things didn't come back the way they thought they were going to.
Yeah.
So it makes me nervous for the whole this whole
Um,
entire thing.
I guess, I have just two other questions or comments, and then I would love to hear from everyone. The first is, if the consultant finds out that this is complex or legally questionable, what then? I guess I got the guidance from the council that we would continue for a year to work through this process. It seems like this accelerates that
Yes.
by quite a bit.
That's right.
And I thought it was gonna be a collaborative, process. And maybe you can understand, but having two entities hire a consultant to advise and direct that consultant without the third entity part of that, that kind of feels like we're kind of left
Well,
out.
We actually had a piece in there to clarify that. It's not our intent that you wouldn't participate. You would. And, you know, that's what I talked to Kyle about is as we move forward, the feedback that we're getting from this consultant, we want the city's input to make sure that what we shape is, you know, gonna meet the needs.
Well, and it seems to me we're
Going
missing a
forward.
couple of things here. One is, again, the city's indicated that they may pull out in 60 days. So we have to have a plan to move forward. The other side of that is, I lost my train of thought.
You've mentioned that twice. My understanding is the city has indicated that,
Well, I know there was a motion and they want to extend it for
Well,
another
yeah,
year, but
right.
prior to the last special meeting, that was the indication from the city that they were gonna give a 60-day notice. Kyle made the motion to extend it to June of next year, which we appreciate. We're just saying that it may be more efficient to take it to the end of this budget year. The city can participate in this. But either way, and and I think where we're maybe you, Mr. Mayor, and some of the council is, the JPA has proven to be legal. All we're trying to do is enhance it.
Right.
We're not trying to create a taxing authority, another authority. All we're trying to do is take this JPA and quite frankly, do what it hasn't done for 10 years. And come up with a master plan, come up with some type of forward-looking plan to take us into the future to better serve our communities. And we feel as though that if we all stick together and work as a team and a group, that's more efficient, just like the deputy chief or the chief. You're paying a chief probably 6 figures to maybe just be the executive officer of Sandpoint. But the efficiencies with these small agencies, I'm sure he's got the ability to do that, to be the executive officer of all those agencies. And so that's kind of the feeling we're doing is trying to create efficiencies here. That makes sense.
yeah. I hear you there. I think efficiencies make a lot of sense. I'm just trying to understand the tightened timeframe of 6 months during the middle. We literally started our budget process 3 weeks ago. And this is really going to, I think, not give us the time to work through in good faith the options and the process. One of the downsides to partnering with Sandpoint is, as I mentioned, we've got 12 other things going on, so we may not be able to respond as quickly. Fire is not the only thing in our wheelhouse. So accelerating this to 6 months, I think puts a couple of challenges. One, budgetarily, it puts us at the precipice where if the consultant finds out that this isn't functional or the council isn't comfortable moving in this direction, we're gonna end up with a budget, it sounds like, which is Sandpoint Fire Department solo. And then, boy, I'd love to have a robust discussion about what this is gonna look like, how it's gonna work, and boy, a couple months is a pretty tight. When do you all, but when do you all start your budget?
Oh, so,
Budget gets started in June.
yeah,
Doesn't it have to be published in the paper by,
We have to have it by
Yeah.
June, right, chief?
Yeah, we're usually,
So that you
June.
have it.
usually, we usually go through and do we have the preliminary budget done. Then we get into the JPA budget, to the share budget, and then that gets recommended out to the, to the different agencies, and then they would have to approve that, and that's how we built it into their budget, but.
But I think that's what we're missing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, or Geraldine, if you want to jump in, is that Sandpoint and Sagal have come up with a plan to move forward and take our district's burden off the city. So we're already looking at third parties that we would pay those administrative duties to.
Yeah.
And take that burden off the city. So if the city is, the time frame is too tight, you're still only paying for what you're providing, your fire system.
Yeah.
At some point, as we come back on a monthly basis and report back what the consultant's telling us or showing us or whatever, and the city feels comfortable in that, at some point they say, we feel comfortable, we want to be a part of that. Then we can come back and say, well, okay, you need to contribute to where it got us to this point.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
And we're gonna have that discussion over the course of those 6 months and,
Right.
you know,
So you guys would be, I'm assuming that you guys would be then tracking and billing out like this, doing all that kind of stuff to real cost, all that kind of stuff. So that would be the next question is that, so then we'd be paying, the city would be paying somebody else to do that, on behalf of the finance would be being done like this, like what we're doing. They'd basically be being billed for our own time.
no, you'd be being
Well,
billed
our
for-
guys' own time.
Yes, your fire support,
Yes,
yes. And whatever administrative and finance cost is gonna be wrapped up in, just like it is for you billing us.
yep.
It's no different.
Well, it is, but
It's coming from a different.
yes,
So.
but I guess that goes back to the,
You'll be like us now,
yes.
is I
Yep.
guess what I
Yep.
meant by it's no different.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get
Well, no, because you guys are not gonna have it. It's gonna be a different agency that's gonna have it over.
We're either gonna
that, so
hire
it'd
it
be
or
different.
farm it out. We have to figure that part out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, the details we have to sort.
Yeah.
But notionally,
No, I
Yes.
get what you're
Yes.
saying there.
Yep,
So, I'm a eternal skeptic. Sorry, it's just my nature. So if things don't go well, this is my fear. If they don't go well, the consultant, if something comes up, there's a hiccup or I'm concerned that you get 2 months into this and we've published our notice in the paper of our budget. And I believe you probably are also obliged to do that as well. And absent a contingency, which is to continue the JPA for a year as discussed with all those numbers in the budget. I have full confidence in Sarah, we'll be fine, we'll budget for our 9 firefighters. But I think it's risky to do it this quickly because if the consultant comes back for any reason, if there's a hiccup or a challenge,
But there's already a JPA.
yeah, we'll just keep it the way it
We'll
is.
just keep it the way it is.
Yeah, we'll just keep going. If we can't, if we reach a financial brick wall. then
Yeah, or
we're
the
gonna
going
keep
up.
going.
but.
And we'll be talking on a very frequent basis, more frequent than we're meeting here, I think.
But and correct me, anyone, if I'm misinterpreting something, but what I think is being missed is that starting this month, we have to budget and publish one way or the other.
But you're only budgeting for yourself.
No.
No.
They're gonna
No,
budget
no.
for the
We budget
JPA
for
the
the
way
whole
it is.
JPA.
yeah,
So
So
that's
that's-
revenue and
Yeah.
expenditures. So we are Sarah's budgeting for all the money you're contributing right now and for those employees on our books. So the fear of doing it this quickly
yes.
is that if anything happens with a consultant, he goes on vacation and flips out like some consultants do. We will be collectively, and more importantly, you will be in a situation where there's no budget plan for the JPA from the city side and nothing to come back to because we'll be basically
But
budgeting.
that's, I guess, where we're missing it, is that West Side and Sagal are saying they're gonna do their budget using a third party. Not the city. Oh, so,
Regardless of what that
Regardless.
comes back.
right, am I,
And if we wind
Okay,
up
that's-
sending the money to the city, so be it, right?
No,
Well,
but
no,
I
that's
mean,
the problem.
that's a problem
That's
that
the
we
problem
won't have
is
budgeted at that
Because they're
point.
Sandpoint employees,
By this-
we can't just
Yeah.
come August
Yeah.
say, oh, it's not gonna work. Let's keep this going until,
Geraldine, go ahead.
I would have to say that that's the exact position you had us in for the last 3 months with this big threat of pulling out. So we have been planning
Pull out.
all along, how will we stand alone? So we have been processing those questions because all due respect, Mayor Grimm, you have been leading us down this path of Sandpoint pulling out. You have been asking us to prepare ourselves for that. So we are going to come up with a budget that is standalone. If Sandpoint wants to come in, great. It's not going to be illegal. It will be a legal JPA. There is no, this whole, what if he comes back and says it's illegal? That's not the conversation. The conversation isn't all of a sudden, is he gonna say, hey, you two districts can't work together? That's not gonna happen. It's a matter of what is it gonna take shape as? And you're exactly right. We don't want to enter into a whole new budget cycle with a partner who has been saying ad nauseum, we don't want to work with you. This is outside our bandwidth. So we are doing our due diligence by lining up a consultant. You asked why we have a consultant with 2 districts. It's because the 3rd district may have different interests. And we're not putting words in your mouth. These are words that are coming straight from your meetings, including that last special meeting. We are simply responding, and it's not a matter of, we want to cut Sandpoint out. It's a matter of, we want to develop a more equitable JPA. It's not going to be illegal. Now the next step is, these 2 districts are gonna come up with a budget that we can fund. If Sandpoint comes in, the money that you are already setting aside, the 1.3, which is not 50% of your taxpayer money, by the way, that should be corrected publicly next time. Then that 1.3 is still in your budget. You already in past years have budgeted 1.3 million for fire services. There have been extra costs that these 2 other agencies have paid in. Now those 2 other agencies won't pay in. So your budget will either remain, in fact, you have said you could do it for less with your own fire district. So it's possible that you'll have more in your budget than you need. I don't know the panic. You'll either have your 1.3 there for your fire district, or you'll have less. I do see on Sarah's point that it's a big consideration because all these employees come off your docket. That's a big administrative change. But that change was gonna happen if you pulled out of the JPA at your last meeting. So we've been anticipating this potential change all along, since January, when we first started having these conversations. It's not new.
okay. Just, 1.50, I believe what you're referring to is Councilman Welker's.
Like 5 times.
Comment of 25%,
Yeah,
not 50%.
It
And-
just like kept growing every time.
And that's general fund dollars, not,
1.3 million is 25% of your general fund.
It was 25% of property taxes is what he said.
So on City of Sandpoint,
Property taxes.
fire accounts for 25% of what everybody pays on taxes.
On,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I
that's
think-
what his, that's,
I
yes,
think if you go back, he said
He said it
25% of his, but why would we send
Of the budget.
25% of his?
Of our budget,
Of
but
our
it
budget.
doesn't matter, you're
Yes,
right,
that's-
but
so, I also wanted to, mention, so I think you also need to understand or plan for, it's not just our budget, so your JPA budget, if this all works, this enhanced JPA, not knowing Sandpoint's involvement or not. Likewise, you're talking about setting a budget legally, you set it at the maximum. If the council decides to join that, your budget has to reflect potential inflows of.
We do an
1.3 million.
amendment.
correct, as if we had hired 9 new employees, correct. Correct, and then it would also impact at the chief level. So those are 2, we're basically looking at 2 models. But you act surprised that we're preparing ourselves, and yet, can you have thought that we would sit here idly after all the statements that have been made, saying you want to pull out? That would be negligent as elected officials. So we're doing exactly what you've asked us to do.
Yep.
And so in reference to your doubts about it, does it seem like a quick timeline? We've been talking about this since January, when we first got the inkling that things were going to need to change. And we have done some scratch paper penciling of finances. It's not to do anything behind the scenes, but it is also not to be caught leaving our districts uncovered by an adequate, prior agency.
Thank you. I guess we all are, free to have our own interpretations. My interpretations of the communications from West Side and Sagal, that were represented in my staff packet at the last special council meeting were, I guess, a little different, that you were moving forward, in this enhanced JPA. I also heard the council say that they were very interested in working through this for a year. And now we've got another pivot, which is let's end it or move it towards this fiscal year. I can adapt to change as well as anyone. That's fine. I just, clarity is important. And just was raising concerns about in an open dialogue of what we're gonna have to budget for. The decision will ultimately be the city council, of course. And not being a party to what I thought was gonna be a collaborative working group, hiring a consultant, which by all means, I think you're
The wheels
smart.
were moving on that over a month ago. Yeah,
Okay.
so, I mean,
Totally.
we're,
Understand. No, I appreciate that. I might be doing the same thing if I were in your shoes.
hopefully.
This is, week, I think 13 on the job for me, so, I inherited some of this, but, I heard from the council that they wanted to work with you all for the next year.
Invitation's there, that's what we want.
But this proposal is 6 months, so.
It's an extension, though. If you recall, the first time we extended was 3 months at your council meeting,
To June.
and then we agreed to that. So it's an extension. It doesn't mean the JPA is cut off at the knees at that point. It's an extension, meaning that gives us at least the 3 months. In that period of time, there may be enough to get the work done needed to approve an enhanced JPA. If at that end of that 6 months, there's not enough, then there's not. And I realize Sarah's concerns and semi-panic.
No, not at all. I just want to know what I need to budget for. That's all I care about really is, do I include the JPA or do I not? And from this I don't, so.
And
That's fine.
absolutely, Kyle has been invited to any conversations. They're not secret, and it has always been the intent to stay together if possible.
I think the other side of this is the council should, in my opinion, be appreciative that these two districts are putting up the funds to look at a better model to improve on something that's been going on for 10 years that the council has set up there, and we're just kicking the can down the alley more and more, and nothing's happening. So now we're trying to make something happen to actually improve it. And the districts are putting up the fund, funding the funds to improve the entire community, which benefits the council, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I see that for sure. I absolutely see that. I'm just trying to get clarification of what this means, as we plan our budget here. And what I've heard today is we plan our budget, without any JPA funding, or employees. So we plan the Sandpoint budget with 9 employees and 1 chief and no administrator, no deputy chief.
I did want to make one clarifying point that we keep saying 6 months, but unless we were to remove that 60-day notice period, it would actually only be 4 months. And then when you look at the timing of council meetings to approve something, that would actually have to be in front of Sandpoint Council like early July. And so that was a concern that I had as I was thinking through this. And so again, I reached out to the deputy chief and asked, is this even a reasonable timeline? And he assured me that it was, that it can happen, have something for council to consider by early July, because that's really when we're gonna be talking about this again. We're not talking about it in June, we're talking, so it won't be the end of September when we're discussing this. It can't be. But yeah, I did want to ask a clarifying question. So when we make our budget, it can be smaller, but it can't get any bigger, right?
Right, when we go in July, we always, what we call dropping the budget, that's in, the second meeting in July, and that is the max budget, and that's not an Idaho, code, that you do your max budget. And then from there, you can always come down, you can, as council, can always cut things, can always move things around in there, you can never go higher than that.
Right, so if we,
Until it's adopted, then you can go and amend it after that.
right, so if we budgeted to, as if we were joining an enhanced JPA, and then maybe even had a second look at the budget as if we were exiting the JPA entirely, and we're only covering our own expenses, those would be fairly similar. Maybe one would be a little bit more than the other, we don't know. But the one thing that we won't be able to do after that is add all of the Selkirk and West Side people back in. So if I understand this correctly, we won't be able to continue the JPA as it stands right now on September 30th if we go this route.
And that's what they.
Financially.
Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
That's what I
Well,
was-
see, can I ask the question, if maybe it's out of my lane, but why wouldn't you said max budget, why wouldn't you budget to continue it then? Wouldn't that be the max?
Because it's
budget?
just telling me I can't.
It's,
So
this is telling you you cannot.
this is saying that you guys will
This is
not be
the-
part of it, so I would not budget it. I mean, I would not budget this in there, because if I ever got on a stand and I say, why did I put in $3 million of budget into my budget? When I have this legal document that was signed, I would be fried. I can't do that. I mean, that would not be prudent of the city to do that, put it that way. I shouldn't say fried, but you know what I mean? It's just, if this said like, even like, yeah, if it's even said like the year, then we would budget a whole year of budget in there would be fine, because it's in continuation to be determined later in that next fiscal year. But this one here is like, it's kind of black, it's a good cutoff. I like it because it gives us certainty of what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but it is something that needs to be discussed, because it is a huge thing on our end, on your guys' end and everything, and I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. And
So, there's a couple other things. I guess what I'm driving at is I would love this not to be such a tight time frame, because as described, we're talking like a July response. Maybe coming back from the consultant, what's this look like? I have all sorts of thoughts, like, once that comes back, I'm sure the council is gonna wanna look at what does that agreement look like, and maybe debate it and discuss it for a week or two or a month.
And we might have a counter offer for you guys, just like you had a counter offer for us. And I think that's a normal part of the process. I don't want it to be a do or die. You guys have to pass this or it's nothing.
But correct me if I'm wrong. We're going financially, administratively, we go our separate way. You go your separate way. Come September. Doesn't mean that you couldn't go to a month, because all you're doing is we're not paying you, so we're our separate ways. We could come up, I'm sure, with some type of agreement, maybe a month, maybe a quarterly or whatever, that says we need to work these details out more before the city's comfortable with one way or the other. You see where I'm going with this? Is although for budgeting, it ends in September, maybe there's an extension of an agreement after you see the consultant stuff that says, okay, we want to extend on a 3-month basis.
but we would be done with budgeting at that point, so we wouldn't have those people in our budget. We would have to go add those people back in.
I was gonna pull this
There you
thread,
go.
but I stopped. On the budget side, right, you don't have the whole fire department, but if you did, you would have bill outs for all but 9 of them, maybe, deputy chief, that's debatable, but most of it,
if you put them in your budget, you would have offsetting bill outs for most of
Yes,
it,
yep,
right? So it's almost
it's a wash.
a wash,
Yep.
exactly.
But
So,
it doesn't matter, by the Idaho state law, you cannot go above you cannot exceed your expenditures. So if you don't budget for those in the thing, we'd have to open the budget back up. And if we don't have those employees in our budget, we cannot pay those people because they're not in our budget. We've eliminated those at that point. So
That's
at,
what I'm saying, right?
but you wouldn't illuminate them till the.
correct, yes, correct. It would be on October 1st would be the cutoff date that they would, I wouldn't say eliminate, but that would go out of our budget and they would go on to wherever they go now.
Right.
Yeah, because
So-
it's going to be created in our budget for everything
Yeah.
outside of Sandpoint. So either way, we still are financially responsible
Yep.
for our group and somehow how to pay for it.
Yeah, that still is how it is now. I mean, you guys still budget for all this stuff. So that's not gonna change. It just wanted to be very clear that's what that means, is that they would literally be going out, wouldn't be paid by us anymore. And I think you guys know that. You guys I mean, it seems like,
That was
You're
3
aware
years
of
ago, right?
And we wouldn't be paying you, we're gonna be paying
Yeah.
some other third party.
yes, exactly.
And that's
Yes.
how it was 3 years ago?
Yes, 3 years ago, that's how it was. So I mean, to me, it's just going back to what it was 3 years ago. And it worked fine then. You guys were using an accountant in town and they were made, and before that, it was a admin assistant that was here that was doing that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
And I'm only jumping in here because I'm the one that's had a conversation with the consultant. And he's asked me a lot of questions and I said, I don't know how to answer these questions because, you know, I'll do my best. One of the options is, because what I hear is that Sandpoint doesn't want all these employees. And you mentioned the 9 employees and going back to that. That is an option going forward, that Sandpoint could still join this and have their own employees.
Mhm.
So that was a discussion as well, and I specifically, and I wasn't here 4 years ago, but I specifically brought that up to consultant. We were just having a casual conversation. And I said, that seemed to work a lot better for the city of Sandpoint. It does feel like a step backwards, but maybe that's how you keep a partner. So that's still kind of the elephant in the room, but that's not out of the realm of possibility, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, and I wanted to extend it. I think I'm the only one that has the historical knowledge like beyond 4 years. So call me if you need any questions, call me, you know, on any of that kind of stuff, because I have been here that long, so.
And you also, and I did talk to Councilmember Schreiber, there's a plan, I'm gonna give them a list of everybody that we're gonna call to. I'm just the funneling guy, the guy that points the direction.
Yeah.
Engage you as a stakeholder, probably
Yeah.
engage you as a stakeholder. We may come out of this and it may be, hey, the Sandpoint's gonna be the fire chief and the 9 employees, and, you know, hopefully there's, you know, I'll take a probationary firefighter somewhere, but, and then, you know, the districts are gonna have their own employees, maybe the districts are funding a battalion chief or a deputy chief, or maybe Northside's, you know, comes in at some point in the future. That's the elephant in the room. We hope they do someday, but we don't know if the political will is there. So we don't know what we don't know. We need somebody to come in and look at this and say, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Well, mom and dad can't agree, so now we've got marriage counseling.
yeah, I
We need more counseling time.
I was optimistic that we didn't have this gun to our head and we had a year to work through this. Where all this could, in good faith, come to a grand solution. So I'm just expressing my concern that based on this date, the implications could be pretty, well, I guess it would go back at the worst, it would go back to what it was 3 years ago. Would you generally agree to that, Sarah, or?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
from a budget standpoint,
Yeah.
from a
Okay.
employee standpoint. And then that was my biggest, making sure that everyone's aware that that's
Okay.
what that means. And it sounds like, yes, that is.
Good. Excellent. Well, that alleviates my big concern, is I didn't want to leave anyone in a lurch or put us in a situation where we're making decisions on the fly. So I guess, in terms of this, I need to bring this to the city council. Luckily, we're putting the agenda out tomorrow. So I'll probably need representatives at the 17th to discuss this and explain it. Because I don't make these decisions, the council will be making these decisions. And we'll just have to have that conversation then. I commend and appreciate Deputy Chief Armstrong's work in this. Thanks for taking the lead and, you guys for thinking creatively. And again, I was hoping, and I do hope that it's a, collaborative, process that, is a grand win for all of us. So, with that, I don't think there's any action on it, other than I'll bring it to the council, and barring if the council objects to it, I'm just thinking forward, that means someone's gonna have to trigger this 60-day notice for wrapping this thing up by June 30th. I mean, that's another option. If the council balks at this, we still have that 60-day withdrawal or termination clause that we're gonna have to trigger by the end of May or beginning of May. Which then throws in the collective bargaining and everything else with people. So, I guess that's the action is to, take it to the city council and see what they think.
Is the action item then, would the action item be for the JPA board to vote approval recommendation to take it to city council? I think that would be, does that sound right? Does that sound right?
I'm at a loss these days.
You know,
I think it's already signed by the.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah,
yeah.
This was a letter in response to a
Yeah,
request.
I think this is the response to our,
We brought it
dude.
here so we could have a discussion, so it wasn't,
Right.
oh my God, did you see?
yes,
I called Kyle, I know you and Geraldine have talked.
yep. It's-
So
No,
we
I-
wanted it on the topic for this meeting, only for information.
Yep, no, I think that's great. Bring it to the council and we'll answer some questions again and talk through it again.
And at least for the next couple of meetings, Mayor,
Mhm.
maybe have a standing agenda item, an update on consulting.
Sure.
So
Sure,
that we can provide those updates
that,
at this meeting.
that sounds great. I'd love to see, as much information about that as possible. I'd love to have some, speaking on behalf of Sandpoint, if the district's gonna be formulated, I'd love to have some feedback and input into that from the city's perspective, rather than here it is, take it or leave it. That seems,
Our intent was Kyle was engaged with us through the input from the consultant and, you know, where we're headed. And, you know, we're trying to be fully above board. We even gave you our thoughts before we have any, you know,
Yeah.
real meat from the consultant. Here's our goals. And so we're trying to be fully above board. So we
Yeah.
would have him engaged and bring stuff to this meeting. And if we need something else, we can do that too.
yeah, and, I'll get with Kyle and we'll work through that, and we've got our own process on our side, obviously with the full council, having feedback and input, and, yeah, we'll try to keep the ball rolling as best we can.
And not to continue this on, but in talking about budget, would you consider, I guess, depending on the council's decision, possibly budgeting to participate in this consultant of this enhanced JPA going forward after this?
You know,
Something to consider.
I only speak for myself, and the employees, that I manage, but, I think that's certainly worth discussing when this comes to the council next week. What,
So you don't have
do you
to
have,
add to it.
do you have any idea of what the cost is on that?
It's-
Our cost right now is 18,000 for the 3 months,
18?
It's 6,000.
6,000 a month.
And was the consultant chosen out of a request for proposal or because he's a friend or?
Because they have vast experience in this field, and they just have vast experience in many states of doing things like this.
Sure.
In addition to potentially helping with the levy situation.
Was it advertised as a opportunity?
No.
we did a cost analysis and determined to move forward.
It was just chosen. Yeah, and that's, I guess, the last thing I'd say is, sort of pleading for following the sampling council's 1 year extension is, you know, by that time, you'll know how your levies, prevailed. And it just, I think it would give us collectively a lot better clarity about staffing levels, about, a lot. So it seems like there's a lot of advantages, as well as the time, maybe even to bring Northside in, to looking at a 12-month period rather than a 6-month period.
Well, and I don't know if you're aware, but North Side, Sadle and West Side commissions have all approved to look at May of 2025 as the levy date.
Okay, so not this fall?
No, we realigned to all be at the same time.
We want to go with a coordinated joint effort in this.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
And that's been approved by all the commissioners.
When we talk, did I bring that up? I might accept. Yeah. I meant to.
All right. Well, I don't think that's an action item, so, but I will bring this to my council in terms of the response from our letter that we sent out for the year-long extension. Any other items for the benefit of the KPA to discuss? All right, well, no further business before the board. This meeting is now adjourned at 3:15 PM. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.